Welcome to my channel, Curse of the Black Moon series, 10 chapters of horror and transformation. Chapter 3, The First Victim and the Whispers in the Dark. The full moon hung like a sinister eye in the night sky, casting long, eerie shadows across Adrian's tormented face. The memories of that fateful night, the night of his first transformation, were still fresh in his mind, leaving him shaken and horrified. But now there was something more, an unsettling new development in this terrifying saga. Every night Adrian would be plunged into a deep sleep, only to be yanked back to consciousness by a blood-curdling scream, a scream that echoed the primal fear of a creature trapped in its own skin. The nightmare always ended abruptly, just as he was about to discover the source of the scream, leaving him in a state of maddening suspense. Waking up drenched in cold sweat, Adrian would find himself in the remnants of his dreams, grasping at fragments of memories from a life he no longer recognized. These fragments offered tantalizing glimpses into his past, half-remembered faces, fleeting images of a life before the curse, and above all, the chilling echo of the creature's mournful cry. What was this creature? Why did it haunt his dreams? And why did it sound so heartbreakingly familiar? Desperate for answers, Adrian started poring over old yearbooks, searching for any clue that could unlock the mysteries of his past. His fingers traced the names and smiling faces of his former classmates, hoping to find a connection, anything that could shed light on the darkness that was consuming him. As days turned into weeks, his obsession grew, driving him to spend every waking moment consumed by the creature within. He became increasingly detached from reality, neglecting his friends and family, losing himself in the labyrinth of his own mind. He began scouring the local newspaper archives, searching for any reports of missing persons or mysterious deaths that might somehow be linked to his curse. It was during one such late-night internet search that he stumbled upon a news article that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. The article detailed the gruesome murder of a young woman, her body found mutilated in a secluded part of the forest near his home. The details of the attack were horrifying. The wounds on the victim's body strangely animalistic, as if inflicted by some savage beast. But it was the date of the murder that truly sent a chill down Adrian's spine. It was the same night he had first transformed, the night he had spent running and howling at the moon in the dense forest. Could he have been responsible for this heinous crime? The thought was both repulsive and terrifying. The idea that a monster lurked within him, a creature capable of such brutality, filled him with dread. As these horrifying realizations began to take shape in Adrian's mind, he found himself torn between two desperate impulses. On one hand, he was driven by a morbid curiosity to understand the full extent of his curse, to learn more about the creature he had become. But on the other hand, he was terrified of what he might discover, of the darkness he might find lurking within his own soul. It was a battle between his desire for knowledge and his primal fear of the unknown. Torn and tormented, Adrian felt as though he were being pulled in two different directions by two opposing forces. The relentless pull of his monstrous alter ego, urging him towards the darkness, and the fading embers of his humanity, desperately trying to hold on to the last vestiges of his former self. But the horrors of that night were not confined to his own personal hell. As Adrian grappled with his inner demons, the full moon climbed higher in the night sky, bathing the world in its eerie glow. The shadows danced ominously around him, seeming to writhe and twist into grotesque shapes. And then he heard it, a whisper in the darkness, a voice that seemed to slither into his ear, sending shivers down his spine. At first, it was just a faint sound, easily dismissed as a figment of his overactive imagination. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, morphing into words that sent a chill down Adrian's spine. They called to him, beckoning him towards the forest, promising answers to the haunting questions that plagued his mind. The voice was like a venomous caress, both seductive and terrifying, weaving a dark spell that threatened to consume him. But amidst the chaos of his thoughts, another sound cut through the darkness, a low growl that seemed to rumble from the very depths of the earth. It was a sound that spoke of ancient power and primal fury, a sound that sent a jolt of fear through Adrian's trembling frame. He spun around, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird, searching for the source of the terrifying noise. But the growl had come from within, a guttural sound that resonated deep in his chest, as if the beast within was stirring, ready to break free from its confines. In the ensuing moments, Adrian found himself frozen in place, caught between the beckoning whispers and the growing roar of the monster within. It was a battle between his human consciousness and the encroaching darkness, a struggle to retain control as the shadows threatened to engulf him completely. As the full moon reached its zenith, casting an ethereal light over the forest, Adrian felt the whispers intensify. They were no longer mere wisps of sound, but clear, commanding voices urging him towards the edge of the trees. The voices promised him the answers he craved, the knowledge he sought. They painted a picture of a world beyond his own, a world where he could embrace his true nature and find acceptance among his own kind. The growl from within him intensified, echoing the whispers and amplifying their allure. It was a symphony of darkness, a chorus of voices calling him towards the unknown. But even as the whispers grew louder, a small voice inside Adrian resisted. A part of him, however faint, refused to give in to the shadowy embrace. It whispered of danger, of a darkness so profound it could consume him whole. This internal conflict, the battle between the whispers and the inner growl, represented the central struggle within Adrian. On one side, the whispers promised understanding and belonging, offering him a glimpse of a world where he wouldn't be alone in his monstrous existence. The growl, on the other hand, spoke of an untamed primal force, a raw, unfiltered expression of the creature within. As the night reached its climax, Adrian found himself at a crossroads, torn between the promises of the whispers and the primal pull of the growling beast. The full moon cast long, dramatic shadows on the forest floor, creating a macabre dance of light and darkness. And then, as if in response to Adrian's inner turmoil, the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, coalescing into a pack of shadowy wolves. They emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing like embers in the gloom, their forms shifting and fluid, almost liquid-like in their movements. Their presence exuded an otherworldly power, a raw, untamed energy that sent a shiver down Adrian's spine. These spectral wolves represented the manifestation of Adrian's inner struggle. They embodied the duality of his nature, the conflict between his human past and his monstrous present. As the wolves closed in on Adrian, their eyes boring into his with an intensity that was both mesmerizing and terrifying, he felt the whispers reach a crescendo. Their voices, now echoing in his mind, urged him to embrace the darkness, to give in to the beast within. But as the wolves advanced, a new sound pierced the night, a desperate cry that was unmistakably Adrian's own. Yet it was a sound twisted and distorted, as if coming from a creature far more feral than Adrian himself. The cry echoed through the forest, a mournful lament that spoke of a deep primal sadness, a longing for something lost and a fear of what was to come. It was the voice of the wolf, the creature that now inhabited Adrian, and it was calling out, reaching out from the darkness, desperate for connection. Adrian stood at the precipice of his transformation, caught between the beckoning whispers of the wolves and the mournful cry of his inner beast. The full moon bathed the forest in its eerie light, turning the trees into gnarled, menacing figures that seemed to watch his every move. And then, as the final seconds ticked by, the whispers reached a fever pitch, urging him towards the wolves, towards the darkness that awaited. With a final gut-wrenching howl, Adrian gave in, surrendering to the transformation that was taking hold. And as he did, the shadowy wolves surged forward, enveloping him in their spectral embrace. In that moment, Adrian ceased to exist. In his place, a monstrous wolf emerged, its eyes blazing with an otherworldly fire, its form radiating a raw, untamed power. With a start, Adrian jolted awake, gasping for breath as if trying to suck in the remnants of a fading dream. The nightmare clung to him like a shroud, its icy fingers digging into his skin, making it difficult to shake off the lingering dread. Sitting up, he looked around his room, the walls seeming to close in on him, the shadows in the corners taking on menacing shapes. The nightmare had been vivid and terrifying, filled with symbols and images that seemed to carry a deeper, more sinister meaning. As he struggled to piece together the fragmented images from his dream, Adrian realized that he wasn't alone. A pair of eyes, glowing an eerie green, were watching him from the dark corner of the room. Startled, Adrian scrambled back, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. But as he forced himself to turn and face the corner, the eyes vanished, leaving him in an unsettling darkness that seemed to hum with unseen energy. Fear coiled in Adrian's stomach, tightening its grip, making it hard to swallow. Was the creature from his dreams reaching out to him? Was it trying to communicate, to warn him, or perhaps to threaten him? The ambiguity of the situation, the lack of clarity in the darkness, amplified his terror. He was trapped in a waking nightmare, unsure if he was losing his sanity or if there was something sinister lurking just beyond his sight. As the minutes ticked by, the silence in the room grew deafening. Each creak of the house, each rustle of leaves outside the window made Adrian jump, his senses on high alert, his body tensed, ready to flee or fight. Then he heard it, a soft growl, low and guttural, emanating from the corner where the eyes had appeared. It was the sound of a predator, wild and untamed, a sound that sent shivers down Adrian's spine and froze the blood in his veins. With each passing moment, the growl grew louder, more insistent, tearing through the silence like a jagged shard of glass. Adrian felt a primal fear grip him, a fear that bypassed his rational mind and resonated deep in his bones. The fear of being hunted, of being stalked by an unseen menace. Yet despite his terror, a morbid curiosity propelled him forward. He found himself drawn to the dark corner, mesmerized by the unseen entity that was revealing itself through its haunting growls. As Adrian cautiously approached the corner, the growls intensified, now echoing in his mind, vibrating in his skull, threatening to shatter his sanity. He could feel the darkness in the room shifting, as if the very shadows were coalescing into a tangible form. Just as he reached out to try to touch, to feel the darkness, the growling abruptly stopped. The silence descended once again, heavy and suffocating, broken only by Adrian's ragged breathing. He stood there for what felt like hours, listening intently, searching for any sound, any sign of movement. But there was nothing. The darkness remained still, silent, mocking his fear. As the tension in the room reached a breaking point, Adrian's hand trembled as he reached out to touch the darkness, to try to make sense of it. But as his fingers brushed against the empty space where the eyes had glinted, a sudden movement outside the window shattered the silence. A dark shape, large and imposing, was slinking along the roof, its movement swift and sure, like that of a predator stalking its prey. Adrian froze, his blood turning to ice. What was that creature, and was it watching him? As the creature moved with a sinuous grace, Adrian felt a surge of adrenaline course through his veins. It was as if an electric shock had jolted him back to reality. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs, while his breath hitched in his throat, forming a lump that was impossible to swallow. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, to hide, to escape the suffocating grasp of fear that was constricting his lungs, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. but Adrian found himself rooted to the spot, paralyzed by an overwhelming sense of dread. He watched in morbid fascination as the dark shape continued its eerie progress along the roof, never taking its eyes off Adrian. There was something intensely unsettling about the creature's movements, a predatory elegance that sent chills down Adrian's spine. It was as though he were witnessing a creature from another world, something that shouldn't exist, yet was somehow watching him, studying him with an alien intelligence. In that moment, Adrian knew he wasn't dealing with a stray cat or a nocturnal animal. This was something else, something darker, something that thrived in the shadows and seemed to feed on his fear. As the full weight of his terror crashed down on him, Adrian realized he was trapped, ensnared in a game of cat and mouse with an unseen predator. To be continued in Chapter 4. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.